Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Perspectives Podcast. My name is Ashley. I'm going to be your host. And honestly, I am recording this right off the coattails. We're going to go with coattails of the last episode. Literally, I just stopped it and then I had another idea about some of this insecurity that's been coming up within me. If you listen to my last episode, I was talking about this trip to Egypt that has been coming up in my awareness. Long story short, I am curious about it. I'm curious about all of the pieces, the breadcrumbs, if you will, the magic breadcrumbs that have been laid out for me about this. But it's bringing up so much fear and insecurity within me. And something that came to me literally as I pressed stop. So part of me was wondering, should I just add this to the other episode? But I'm wondering if I can make a whole nother episode out of this. A whole new episode. So a whole new episode about this insecurity. And the image that I got after I pressed stop is, this idea of, again, if you listen to my last episode, I was talking about how this brings up this trip in general, but it's a pattern that I hold of wanting to know, wanting to feel secure in understanding, in being able to plan, predict, and control. And that's not a bad thing, but I've done it my entire life, and I feel like some of where the universe and my spirit is guiding me is to let go of that control, let go of trying to know, and just find that inner compass within, in my heart, and lead with that. I get this image of, listening to an orchestra and you're picking out I don't actually know if an orchestra has an alto sax, but it's just the one that comes to me, the something. So I'm picking alto sax, but something that you're just like, you hear 9,000 different instruments and you're picking out one and being able to tap into that line. And it's like your intuition, your internal compass is that alto sax, it's there. But we just have been programmed to listen to everything outside of us, everything inside of us too, but everything is one conglomeration of, I won't call it noise because an orchestra is beautiful. However, when you want to just tap into your heart, you got to sit and listen for it, and you got to see what it sounds like, so that when you're listening to the orchestra, you can't unhear it, So I say all that because all of that was always armor for me. I got an image of armor. And it's like this, I don't want to call it a false sense of security, but I feel like in some ways what has been coming up is relearning what it is to be secure within myself without maybe the means that I have previously established for myself. So what does that mean? I feel like like I said, I got this image of armor, and forever, instead of feeling insecure, you pre-plan and take this as it resonates. Obviously, this is for me, but if it can help anybody else in their path, in their understanding, their self-awareness, take it and run, guys. But it's like somewhere along the line, I lost a sense of self. And so I developed, I lost this sense of security within myself, knowing what I want, or, being told that that's not what I want or how I want it, or being made to feel a certain way, I don't know, shame or guilt or something for wanting something. And I use want because that's just kind of what's coming up right now because of this trip. What do I want? What do I want it to look like? And what does my heart truly want? So somewhere along the line, though, I learned how to let my mind make these decisions for me because it's more logical. 4:44 on the clock. And it's like Sorry, I was just thinking about the 444 because on my last one I got to. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Here we are. This armor. Somewhere along the line, I built this armor of security, this armor of understanding, this armor of being able to predict and control. This, and that's just what it is. It's armor. It's something that can be removed. It's something that's not actually physically attached to me. But in some ways, I've never taken it off. I've never, and I feel that it's starting to slow me down. I've read recently, I feel like, and I don't know where, I can't remember, but it was like this sense of armor, maybe it was a video I listened to, armor in a battle, was super useful, but if you never take it off, after a while, you get tired, and it's weighing you down, it's extra weight. And in some ways, that relates very well to what I'm saying, is like, at some point in my life, I was in I felt I was in a battle. And how do you, proceed with a battle is by armoring up, training, like learning all of these things that you can in order to protect yourself, doing all these things that you can in order to protect yourself. But after the battle's done, you don't wear the armor anymore. You take it off. And I think for me, and for probably a lot of you, our nervous systems are still in this battle simulation. So I think in some ways what I'm being asked is how to take this armor off. What does it feel like to take this armor off and just trust that your skin, I was going to say your skin is thick enough. But really, it's just that you are going to be okay without it. It's not that you need thick skin or that you need some form of further protection. I think we are all in this state of feeling like we need to be protected, that we've protected ourselves for so long from all of the injustices and cruelties of the world that, everybody, I don't ever want to feel triggered. I don't ever want to feel anything uncomfortable, so I'm just going to armor up and never let myself feel at all. And it's letting ourselves go, letting our armor down so that we can feel again. So that, because feeling uncomfortable is still feeling. And maybe that's the first step for most of us, is seeing the things that we have been resisting, feeling the feelings that we've been resisting. Allowing those things to come up so we can heal them, because it's not who we are. I'm not an insecure, uncomfortable, and maybe I am. And it's embracing that too. Because the one thing that comes to me as I'm saying that is, who wrote the definition of insecure, and why is that a bad thing? And I'm not saying like I want to walk around and be like, and I'm insecure, guys, but it's like, who wrote these definitions, and why do you have shame and guilt and try to avoid being things that maybe you are? And that's okay too. Like that, I don't have to. The one thing that came up with this whole trip thing, and that still hasn't been booked, by the way, but the one thing that came up is that I don't want to do it alone. Like, I'm tired of traveling alone. I've been living in and out of my car across the United States, and then I was down in Mexico, and you put on this armor. You put on this armor of confidence, this armor of, I know what I'm doing. I'm this world traveler. I am a nomad. I am all of these things. And they're just identities. They're just further pieces of armor so that, when things come up, I'm just a nomad, but really you are insecure. And I'm not calling anybody out, by the way. This is all for me. Well, not all for me. If anybody can resonate, take and run. But I'm calling me out. And it's like, underneath this armor, I am just a scared girl who doesn't know what she's doing and feels too scared to ask anybody for help because you're supposed to be able to do it on your own. You're supposed to be independent. You're supposed to be strong. You're supposed to be all these things. And I know that's a lot of conditioning and a lot of patterns to be released within time. But I don't want to do it alone anymore. And I don't just mean traveling, but I don't want to be so independent anymore. You know, we're here together. We're all living this life together. And I feel there's a reason for that. We're all here to help each other heal. And you can only heal in community and finding your tribe and finding your people and being supported by them and them supporting you. You don't have to be this figure of complete certainty. You know, I think about the business that I want to start. And even before that, I was a physician assistant. So in some ways, it's like, well, I got to have my shit together. You know, I got to know all the things. These people are counting on me. This level of over certainty that you have, that you must have in order to do what you're supposed to be doing. And I don't know. I feel like in some ways it's letting all of that armor go, that armor of independence, that armor of keeping everybody at an arm's distance so they don't actually know that you're scared, so they don't actually know that you're insecure, that you feel so uncomfortable trying to being in another country, learning the language, and you don't want people to see that you don't obviously know how to speak a language you've never spoken before. You know, obviously this is a story just for me, but it's all of the ways in which you've wrapped yourself up in this armor, and so that people don't know that deep down inside you are scared. You don't know what's happening. You don't know where this is all going to go. You, just like everybody else, hope that, you know, you fall into that life of certainty that, and I don't think I've ever said it on the podcast yet, but considering I've only made potentially 2 episodes, but I was married for 10 years, and I'd say that those were in some ways the happiest time of my life, because once it was taken away from me, that's when I realized, my marriage was armor for me, because I knew exactly what I was going to be doing for the next 40 to 50 years. And that was sitting out on that front porch, drinking a beer, I knew what I was going to do every single day, pretty much for the next 40 years, which the person I am today is like, oh my God, that feels terrible. Who would want to do that? But me at that time loved that. Oh my gosh. And you didn't realize how much you were just completely wrapped in armor. I knew who I was because I was, the wife of this person. I was a physician assistant. I was a rock climber. I had all these identities in which I wrapped myself up in. I was nice and cozy in them. And also that I didn't have to plan a goddamn thing for at least 40, 50 years until probably I had to apply for Medicaid or something, not Medicaid, Medicare, if it's still around by that point. Another episode for another day. No. But yeah, it's like this sense of once that ended and that armor was stripped from me, you start to realize how vulnerable you are, how insecure you are. And that was some of the biggest stuff that came up for me. All of this insecurity that I had stored away in these boxes that I keep talking about in previous episodes, but in places where you don't want to see them, in totes and stuff hidden in the back of your closet. And at some point, it was all disrupted, and you got to see that, no, I'm a really deeply insecure individual who has a lot of healing. Not that I saw it that way at first. I was just like, I hate myself. This is the worst. I I had such body insecurity. I had such me insecurity. And if any of you have ever met me, I'd say I'm almost the complete opposite now. And you would not have known that I had so much, and I still deal to this day with insecurities. But at first, when that armor was just like ripped off of me, the marriage, the identities of who I was, it was terrible. It was vulnerable. It was unfucking comfortable. And you start to re-armor up with other things. You know, I found other things. I was a triathlete and I was a rock climber. So you build your armor up, if you will, with those accolades. And I was still a physician assistant at the time, and, you know, but like, then those things start to slip away. They don't feel authentic anymore. And then you try to quickly find something else. And I remember at one point crying because it just felt like everything was disintegrating. Everything I tried on, anything I wanted to do, you know, just did not feel right. Nothing felt right. Nothing felt like me because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was. And I say all this as hopefully I can start to tie it back together. Is this armor. This armor, I think, is finally being asked to Ashley, just freaking drop it already. You know, it's like there's maybe little bits left still, or maybe it's not even little bits left. Maybe somehow I've come across new armor, or honestly, no, I'm getting the image that it is like almost like the leather you wear underneath all the armor. You know, maybe some of the first stuff was the heaviest stuff, but you're still wearing something that's protective. And you don't need it anymore. I think I'm here to see, like, there is a level of security that I have the opportunity to find within myself. And show myself that I am safe. I am safe. And it's like in some ways I've told myself that, but when you're still wearing the armor, of course you're like, yeah, no shit. When you're sitting up in the tower, you know, up in the highest turret, is it a turret? Of course you're safe. You're going to be like, yeah, I'm safe. No shit. But when all of that's crumbling around you and yeah, what am I trying to say? When the armor is finally starting to rot away, you feel exposed because you can tell yourself every single day that I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. But until you actually expose yourself, that sounds dirty. Yeah, we're going to go with it. Until you're actually exposed, then you actually start to feel what real safety feels like. Safety inside of yourself, not because of something a charade you put on, the armor you put on, the persona you want to appear like, but because you actually are starting to know who you are on the inside. And yeah, so if any of you listened to the last episode and this one, tying it back together, you know, as far as like Egypt is concerned, the shaking, the fear, the insecurity I'm feeling is there for a reason, because it's what's been hidden underneath that armor. And I have the opportunity of releasing it and becoming who I am. I was going to say becoming this more secure, fearless version of myself, but maybe that's not who I am. I don't know. It's ideal, but maybe that's not who I am, and that's okay too. But finding out who I truly am on the inside and not surrounding myself with this cardboard cutout that has a face hole punched in, punched out of, and I stick my head out there and everybody thinks I'm this circus performer who's pinching the nipple of the of the cardboard cutout next to me. Where did that come from? Who knows? But I get to really find out who I am. And it's exciting. It's daunting. Oh man, I'm shaking. So with that, another episode. This is going to be a fun week. I'm going to cut this one. And yeah, guys, we're all in this together. We are all doing it. We are all here on this planet uncovering those things about ourselves that we were told to hide, that we were told to hide away from, that it's been modeled to us to present a certain way, to look a certain way, to be a certain way, to be this super confident badass, boss bitch, super masculine, super feminine, super, like all of these things have been conditioned into us to be, instead of just being ourselves, because that was never maybe good enough. And now we get to show them. It's like this new revolution of being authentic and owning the shit that we have. That it's not crazy to whatever. Like, I don't know, like all of these negative terms that have been put upon us, that you might be crazy, that you're loud, you're obnoxious, you're insecure, you are angry, you are, like finding these things that everybody kind of like, ooh, I don't want to be that, and leaning into it. What does it look like to own that? What does it look like to, be in your own energy? What does it look like to be the person that is a model for other people, to be your complete self, and whatever that looks like? All right, I'm sure that will be another episode. So we'll play. Thank you again, guys. I'll talk to yous in the next episode. Peace out.